Assalamualaikum Pak Halim. Halim, apa kabar?
Apa kabar? Muka saya
Alhamdulillah.
nggak apa? Nggak ini ya, nggak backlight ya.
Nggak, agak sedikit backlight tapi masih ini.
Hah? Atau saya pindah tempat duduk atau gimana? Saya kebetulan
Bagus Pak, ya.
Bagus ya?
Bagus Pak.
Saya lagi di luar kota ini, Mas.
Oh gitu, lagi di mana Pak?
Lagi di Bogor.
Oh lagi di Bogor. Waduh, saya padahal lagi di perjalanan sini.
Lagi balik ke rumah. Gimana kabarnya?
Alhamdulillah Pak Halim, makasih banyak sudah bersedia menggantikan Bu Menteri.
Saya juga tiba-tiba baru diberitahunya kemarin siang.
Iya, Bu Menteri awalnya udah positif, semuanya udah set, tapi kemudian Bu Menteri bilang ada rapat mendadak, artinya.
Ya. Ini juga saya jam 3 ditunggu lagi sama beliau nih. Jam 3 kita
gitu
ada
ya.
rapat. Jadi dia mimpin rapat, terus rupanya ada pertemuan dengan Bapak Presiden. Jam 3 dilanjutin lagi.
Oh gitu.
Ya. Jadi
Iya.
tiap hari itu kerjanya kita rapat.
Assalamualaikum Pak Halim.
Waalaikumsalam. Apa kabar Pak Faisal?
Alhamdulillah baik Pak. Bogor lagi sudah lama.
Udah lama nggak ketemu.
Terima kasih banyak ya Pak.
Sama-sama. Saya jadi supir tambang nih, mohon maaf. Kebetulan saya memang ininya tenaga ahli di bidang keuangan syariah. Ya biasanya anak saya untuk ada beberapa isu yang memang sempat kita diskusikan. Ya sebagian nanti saya akan masukkan di dalam pengetahuan beliau, terutama yang di akhir-akhirnya aja gitu. Saya nggak gitu berani sebetulnya mewakili pandangannya, belum tentu apa yang saya sampaikan itu dia setuju juga gitu ya. Jadi saya terpaksa harus agak sedikit diplomatis gitu. Tapi ya, sebetulnya Bu Menteri itu sangat concern dengan pengembangan makroekonominya ya, dari Islamic economic. Saya merasa agak ketinggalan gitu. Ya, karena saya mengatakan latar belakang ahli ekonomi Islam di Indonesia itu kebanyakan dari saya kecilin dikit ya. Ya, jadi latar belakang dari ahli ekonomi Islam di Indonesia itu kebanyakan kan dari pesantren, dari IAIN. Nah, jadi pandangannya itu memang dari sisi mikro duluan, gitu. Solusi-solusi kalau secara mikro ya nggak ada masalah pasti, ya kan? Artinya bagaimana mengelola keuangan secara mikro, bebas riba, alisir atau doror itu bisa gitu. Tapi kalau secara makro, ya kita berhadapan dengan ketidakpastian dorornya itu yang lebih gede lagi. Gitu. Antara ketidakpastian yang satu dengan yang lain itu pasti ada trade-off. Nah ini yang kita perlu cari. Trade-off-nya itu dari sisi makro perspektif. Nah ini yang barangkali dalam konteks Islamic economics itu kita barangkali masih perlu banyak riset di situ. Saya nyinggung sedikit ya, tapi di situ saya nggak berani ngomong trade-off-nya apa, karena belum tentu nanti Bu Menteri setuju.
Nggak apa-apa Pak.
Saya mengatakan ya.
Yang comfortable aja buat Pak.
Sama dengan pertimbangan jangka panjang, gitu. Kira-kira seperti itu.
Ya Pak.
Ya, artinya apa yang optimal secara mikro belum tentu optimal secara makro, gitu loh. Itu sebetulnya yang saya maksud dengan trade-off. Selamat siang, aja sih. Saya terserah tertarik juga nih, kalau nggak rapat pasti saya pengen denger ini apa pendapat dia. Gimana kabarnya Mbak Henry? Lagi di Jakarta atau di Jogja?
Pak. Di Jakarta.
Oh, Jakarta. Saya baru pulang dari Jogja hari Senin.
Oh.
Iya. Iya.
Saya besok, Pak.
Oh, gitu. Naik mobil.
Mau naik pesawat, mau ketemu Pak Rektor.
Waduh. Naik pesawat ya. Oh, sudah vaksin 2 kali, sudah?
Iya.
Sudah vaksin 2 kali?
Belum, Pak. Baru 1 kali.
Oh.
Masih harus antigen nih.
Iya.
I think we should start now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Firstly, my apology that we have the conversations and we didn't realize that we are actually in the general participants finalists. It was not excluded to the spatial room. So some of the participants was actually texting me asking that we cannot hear you because the music was there. We didn't realize that we are in the public. The conversation was like actually being heard by the audience. Again, we apologize for that one. Now, I think we better start now. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. His Excellency Dr. Halim Alamsyah, the advisor to the finance minister in the Sharia, economics and finance sector, in this case representing Her Excellency Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati, the Minister of Finance, the Republic of Indonesia. The Honorable Prof. Murad Cijakcha, we're still waiting for Prof. Murad Cijakcha. It's quite early back in Turkey. It's 10 in the morning. Prof. Cijakcha was actually specially requested that the program should start at 10 in the morning, not 9 in the morning that we used to have 1 o'clock in Indonesia time, because he's feel much awake when it's after 10 in the morning. So we hope that he would join us soon. Also, the Honorable Ibu Henry Saparini, Bapak Muhammad Faisal from the Core Indonesia, fellow academics, researchers, Islamic economics, and Wakaf enthusiasts, ladies and gentlemen, both from Indonesia and overseas, welcome to the Core Public Lecture, Islamic Economics, Wakaf, and their Macroeconomics Context. It is a great honor to have 2 very competent speakers for our lecture today, public lectures today, Dr. Halim Alamsyah and Prof. Murad Cijakcha. Also, to have all of you to learn together from both of our speakers. We have almost 500 participants registered for our programs today, 488 to be more precise. So before we proceed with all the food for thought and the soul, we would like to request a welcoming speech by Pak Muhammad Faisal, the Managing Director of Core Indonesia. Pak Faisal, please.
Yep. Thank you, Pak Ebi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am very, very happy to virtually see everybody today through Zoom and YouTube. It is a great honor for us, for Core Indonesia, to be able to conduct this special event in the form of public lecture. First of all, I would also like to thank our honorable speaker who will deliver his extensive knowledge and share his experience in this public lecture, Professor Dr. Murad Cijakcha from KTO Karata University, Turkey. And also His Excellency Bapak Dr. Halim Alamsyah, the special expert for the Finance Minister of the Republic of Indonesia, who will deliver the general remarks representing Ibu Sri Mulyani today. Terima kasih Pak Halim. And also I would like to thank Ibu Henry Saparini, senior economist and the founder of CORE, and the vice chairperson of the advisory board of the Indonesian Association of Islamic Economists, or IAE. And finally, of course, everybody who is attending and participating in this public lecture, which I believe, based on our registration list, is close to 500 participants on Zoom. And I suppose there are or will be a lot more on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, many of us believe that Islamic economics has great potential to be further developed in Indonesia and globally. As an economic think tank in Indonesia, we from CORE Indonesia also believes that the role of Islamic economics is very, very strategic. And that is the reason why CORE Indonesia has paid a lot of attention to these issues. A few years ago, CORE has conducted an international seminar on halal business that was pulled together experts and practitioners, not only from Indonesia, but also from Japan, Korea, Malaysia, and Thailand. We have also written and published several books on Sharia economics. And recently we have also had a special research division on Sharia economics. And since early this year, we have initiated several public discussions focusing on Wakaf and Sharia banks. In the context of Wakaf, we all know that Wakaf has become a common practice in Indonesian society since a long time ago. The issue on the role of Wakaf in our economy has also been increasingly popular and attracted the attention of many people in Indonesia, not only the Muslim society. And this includes its role as an alternative source of development financing, especially in considering the tax ratio, as we know, in Indonesia, which is still relatively lower compared to its peer countries. And now today, Professor Murad Tijaksa will generously share with us more specifically on the role of Wakaf from the macroeconomic and also the international perspectives. I think it is going to be very interesting and beneficial to all of us. I hope we all can get valuable lessons to take away from him in this occasion. So once again, thank you, everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you indeed, Pak Faisal. Fellow academics, researchers, Islamic economics and Wakaf enthusiasts, ladies and gentlemen. We will now proceed to our general lecture on Islamic economics, Wakaf, and their macroeconomics context. The keynote speech today will be delivered by Dr. Halim Alamsyah, advisor to the Minister of Finance in the Sharia and Sharia economics and finance sector. For our Indonesian audience, I do believe that Dr. Halim Alamsyah doesn't need any further introduction. Pak Halim has been well known for various contributions and role, especially related to his role in the Central Bank, Bank Indonesia. But for the purpose of our international audience, I would like to read some of his CV. Pak Halim graduated from University of Islam Indonesia for management and University of Gajah Mada for law, and Master of Arts in Development Economics from Boston University, and doctoral degree from Faculty of Economics, University of Indonesia. He has started his career in the Central Bank of Indonesia until his top role as the Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia, and then acted as the Chairman of Commissioner Board in the Indonesia Deposit Insurance for the last 5 years. And he's now the advisor to the Ministry of Finance in the Sharia and Sharia economics and finance sector. I think without further ado, I would like to call Pak Halim for the lecture, for the general remarks. Pak Halim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Ebi. Distinguished Professor Murad Tijaksa, Managing Director of CORE, I think first of all, I would like to congratulate also the core and the team, Ibu Hendri Saparini as the founder and managing director, Muhammad Faisal, distinguished moderators, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good morning to Professor Murad, and also selamat siang for everybody in this particular webinar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du. Ladies and gentlemen, praise be upon Allah and the Almighty and the Merciful. I think only through His blessings we are able to gather in the spiritual public lecture to discuss a quite interesting issue to advance the virtue and the values of Islamic principles in our social and economic development agenda. I also would like to greet all of you, both from overseas as well as from Indonesia, Professor Murad, and also all participants in this core Islamic Indonesia public lecture, which is the topic will be on Islamic economics, Wakaf, and macroeconomic context. I'm particularly would like to express my gratitude to the core Islamic Economic and Finance, which has organized this public lecture to discuss this timely topic. In this speech, I would like to briefly explain the history and development of the Sharia economy and finance in Indonesia, their potential, and also a brief information about the Wakaf in Indonesia. And lastly, what will be the strategy that need to be taken to promote Indonesia as the center of Sharia economy in the global world. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the awareness of some societies of using Sharia-based financial services has driven the establishment of Sharia-based financial institutions. The development of modern Sharia economy in Indonesia, as we remember it, was officially marked by the establishment of Bank Muamalat Indonesia in 1991. Then in 1994, the first Islamic insurance company was established, the so-called Syariah Takaful Indonesia. In 1997, 3 years afterward, Danareksa Investment Management launched a Sharia mutual fund, which was the first Islamic capital market product in Indonesia. Since then, the progress of Sharia market is accelerating, and it was received another boost when the government introduced the banking law number 7 in 1992, which effectively introduced a dual banking system in Indonesia. So this dual banking system allows conventional banks to operate based on Sharia principles by opening a Sharia business unit, or UUS in Indonesian term. To accelerate the development of Sharia finance, the government also introduced Sukuk law in 2008 and also Sharia banking law in 2008. Under these two laws, the government of Indonesia issued the first state sukuk in 2008, and it was followed by the first retail sukuk in the world in 2009. The government of Indonesia also enacted Zakat Management Law in 1999 and Wakaf Law in 2004. So officially, Zakat and Wakaf can take an active role and become an integral part in the development of Islamic finance in Indonesia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, after 3 decades of tireless efforts, the progress of Sharia-based economy and finance in Indonesia has been quite notable. Based on Global Islamic Economy Report 2020, that tracks the development of many economic and financial indicators around the globe, Indonesia has made significant strides in developing halal industry value chains and its ecosystem. notwithstanding the Sharia finance, including the zakat, infak, sadaqah, and wakaf. Indonesia currently ranks number 4 in the world for halal industry, making a leapfrog from number 10 or 11 in 2016 and 2017. Furthermore, Indonesia Islamic finance has also made significant progress and succeeded to rank number 2 based on Islamic Finance Development Indicator in 2020. These indicators especially noted that Indonesia has been in the forefront of applying Sharia microfinance financial technology to broaden access, as well as using Islamic social finance applications in mobilizing zakat, infak, sadaqah, and wakaf. Nevertheless, I should frankly also admit, in terms of its role in the overall Indonesia economy, the share of Islamic finance is still relatively small, at around 9.9% from the total financial assets in the economy. And the bulk of it comes from banking sector, which has a 6.5% share, despite the fact that Indonesia is the largest Muslim population country in the world. One notable achievement is that up to March 2021, Indonesia has become the largest issuer of international sovereign sukuk. The total sukuk up to March 2021 is $93 billion US. And in terms of its contributions of Indonesia in the total global issuance of sovereign sukuk, in 2021, it stands at 22.2%. So this is really a very encouraging development for Indonesia. And I think the world knows it, that Indonesia has a very large potential to become the center of Sharia economy in the world. For Islamic social finance, the collection of national zakat in 2018, for example, is accounted as around 10.2 trillion rupiah. This is really, of course, a very meager number. And in contrast to cash wakaf, where the collection up to 2020 is around 391 billion rupiah only. Certainly, these numbers are not really very encouraging. It is still far below the potential. Definitely, there is still more room for development for both commercial and social finance in Indonesia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we just left the year to 2020. And the year 2020 was really a challenging year for all of us. The slowing down of the global economy that has been in momentum since the end of commodity super cycle in or around 2014, when it was coincided with COVID-19 pandemic last year, then it has brought about tremendous severe conditions that the world has never seen before. Indonesia has to see the negative downward spiral of its economy. We, as we know, Indonesians, had a negative growth for 3 consecutive quarters since the second quarter of last year, and it may still continue until the first quarter of this year, as a result of continuing lockdowns to limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Clearly, both economic and social costs of this pandemic-driven malaise was so great that the government and financial authorities have to take unprecedented extraordinary policy measures. I just give you a skeleton of what's going on. In terms of fiscal policy, the government has to draw its purse deeper and expanding its deficit into 6.1% of GDP. This is such a historically large deficit in modern Indonesian economic history since 1965, or during the last 55 years, while Bank Indonesia, the central bank, and Otoritas Jasa Keuangan as the supervisor of the financial system, as well as LPS as the Deposit Insurance Corporation, together hand in hand, providing large stimulus both in terms of liquidity and regulatory relaxation, unseen in our history. Just to make sure Indonesian economy and the financial system keep spinning in efforts to avoid severe consequences to our people. It is worth mentioning that the government provided around 700 trillion rupiah in 2020 alone, and more also this year, for stimulating the economy, and the bulk of it went to social safety net, or the so-called pelindungan sosial, perlinsos, to help the needy and the most vulnerable in our population during this trying and challenging time. We do hope that those policies last year and also this year, together with a smooth rollout of vaccination program, will be critical in ensuring a strong recovery of our economy. Although the first quarter of this year, our economy may still be recuperating, but I believe the worst is over, and the outlook of our economy will be a better one, and we do hope the economy this year may grow around 5 to 5% per annum. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in light of these challenging times, I believe the role of Islamic economy in finance is even much greater than before. We know that Islamic economy has a virtue of promoting productive activities than consumption through the so-called profit and loss sharing principle and avoiding riba, maisir, and gharar. It also has a virtue of delivering justice and equity above everything, so as to make sure everybody prospers with a fair share according to each contribution in the economy. Therefore, promoting Islamic economy and finance is in fact in line with our efforts to revive the economy productively with more inclusivity. It is in this respect that the opportunity to promote Islamic economy and finance is wide open. The government of Indonesia has committed to encourage Islamic economic and financial development in Indonesia, either through regulatory support, creating equal level playing of field, and promoting research and innovation for market developments. As we have described above, Indonesian regulation have a fairly complete regulation, both in commercial and social finance. In addition, there are still other regulations which are still blended with conventional one, such as insurance law and capital market law. All those laws will provide legal certainty for the market players and provide customer protections. The government also creates an equal level of playing field for Sharia finance and the conventional one. This approach is conducted by giving equal tax treatment so that the tax burden borne by users of Islamic finance is the same, or if at least not greater than conventional financial users. This is important because the nature of Sharia finance is unique, where Sharia products will require more contracts than conventional products. Besides, the government also issues financial instruments such as sukuk to deepen the financial market and provides option for the market players to invest. And as we know, in general, the Indonesian financial market is still relatively shallow, and there are not too many financial instruments. Moreover, Islamic financial instruments. And as you may notice that recently, the government, through the Ministry of Finance, collaborated with Bank Indonesia and National Wakaf Board, try to introduce the so-called cash Wakaf linked sukuk, CWLS, in March 2020. The cash Wakaf linked sukuk is a form of social investment where the cash Wakaf collected by the Indonesian Wakaf Board as Nazir through state-owned banks or state-owned bank Syariah and Bank Muamalat Indonesia as Islamic financial institutions receiving the cash Wakaf. And it will be managed and placed in a state sukuk instrument issued by the Ministry of Finance. The Indonesian government also launched retail cash Wakaf link sukuk in October 2020 to give another option to Waqif to perform the Wakaf. For your update, I also would like to draw up the Indonesian Sharia Finance Master Plan, or MAXI, which is already introduced in 2015, which was followed up by the establishment of the National Sharia Finance Committee, and subsequently changed into the National Sharia Economic and Financial Committee, or KNIKS, to strengthen and coordinate as well as synergize between Islamic economic and financial stakeholders in Indonesia. In 2018, the committee has launched a master plan on Islamic economics and finance, and followed up with preparing an implementation plan 2019-2024. At the same time, it also included the medium-term development plan with a focus on developing the halal industry. The objective is quite clear: how to make Indonesia as the center of Islamic economy in the world. In this respect, the government, through the National Sharia Economic and Financial Committee, has designed three main strategies. First, how to accelerate a complete halal value chain industry in Indonesia. This will cover not only halal food as we traditionally knew it, but the whole Sharia industry and activities such as fashions, Sharia compliance, tourism and traveling, healthcare, cosmetic, media and creative contents, as well as digital payments. These are among industries or activities that will facilitate the halal lifestyle that in turn should accelerate the demand for Sharia compliance needs further. Secondly, how to mainstreaming the Islamic economy and finance teaching in our education system. Currently, the awareness of Indonesian people about Islamic finance is still rather low, around 8.9%, according to the latest survey. This is a tremendous challenge, but with great opportunity, considering the increasing identity as Muslims among Indonesian as well as among millennials. Therefore, emphasis has been given in developing appropriate and yet interesting education materials to be delivered not only in high schools, but also in higher education system. Early introduction to our pupils are essential in this case, so as to familiarize our children with Islamic economic and finance concepts, and then it will bring a more productive attitude promoting inclusivity as well as equity. One particular note that I should mention here: most of our research so far in the Islamic economics teaching tend to start from problems that are originated from micro perspective. Avoiding riba, maisir, and garar from micro perspective is undeniably an obligation for Muslims based upon Al-Quran and Hadith. Nevertheless, those teaching needs also need to be strengthened in terms of macroeconomic perspective, so as we can derive more macroeconomic principles in terms of allocating scarce resources to the most productive and yet equitable uses, both in the short run as well as over the longer run. It is quite well known among the policymakers and regulator that we may find some trade-off between short-run or micro perspective and the macro or longer-run objectives. Thirdly, we also need to have a strategy how to exploit the so-called digital innovations so as to mobilize both Islamic commercial finance as well as Islamic social finance more efficiently and effectively in order to also broaden access and inclusivity. This opportunity is very well known to us. I believe it is the right time for us to act rather than to discuss the avenues. there are already so many examples and platforms that we can only choose and implement it. The challenges are, of course, our commitment and our readiness to get familiarized with the digital world. Definitely, zakat, infak, sadaqah, and wakaf, for example, may reap the full benefits of these digital avenues given the relatively low results that we have seen in Indonesia so far. Especially for kas wakaf, for example, we need to use this digital platform as it provides more flexibility so as we can exploit the huge potential available. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would take your precious time more than I should be. In this opportunity, let me congratulate the core Islamic Economic and Finance for their admirable efforts in providing discussion opportunities through this event. I sincerely hope that this public lecture would bring out a fruitful discussion. Finally, I encourage all participants to share experience and discuss this important topic in order to increase the contribution of Islamic finance and Islamic social fund for the prosperity of mankind. I do hope that you enjoy the event, and I wish you all have a productive discussion. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On behalf of Sri Mulyani, the Minister of Finance, Republic of Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Halim. It was really indeed covering lots of things that are under the development in our country for Islamic economics and finance. But we would like to take opportunity to ask some questions, if you don't mind, of course. Some of our participants has posed some question as well. But probably the very first one, you're mentioning just now about the huge potential actually within our countries for making Islamic economics as well as Wakaf as a mainstream and having a bigger role on our development. A question on what would be the cause of the gap between the reality and the potential, looking at the whole system. You're mentioning just now about Wakaf as well as the share of Islamic banking compared to the whole banking system in Indonesia. What would be the cause of the gap between the potential and the reality? Thank you, Pak.
Yeah, let me explain a brief about the situation that we have. I think first of all, it will relate to the relatively low financial literacy in Indonesia, not to mention the literacy in Sharia economic and Sharia instruments. And I gave you the figure there. The latest survey showed that only around less than almost 10% of our population really understood what are Islamic economics and Islamic Sharia finance. So the challenge is, of course, how really to make sure that everybody in Indonesia, especially the Muslims, really understands what are the Islamic economics and what are the opportunities as well as the beauty of Islamic finance, for example. I also believe that the second cause of this gap is because of, maybe simply because of the ignorance, because they don't know what will be the beauty of the Islamic economics. As far as I understand about Islamic economics, it is really based on productive activities, trying to reduce as minimum the consumption activities by giving a lot of attention to the profit and sharing activities. This is the basic tenet of Islamic economy. Of course, you have so many interpretations how the Islamic economy is working, but one of the things that we are quite sure about it, how really to develop the profit and sharing economy. And of course, we need to promote the ecosystem first before we can really, let's say, implement fully the whole principle.
Yeah.
And I think this is the challenging for us, because there are not so many people understand about it. Not to mention the teaching of Islamic economy is really still oriented in micro perspective. That's what I'm trying to say. So
Indeed.
if you don't know the beauty of something, then you don't appreciate that. And this is,
Yes.
I think this is one of the reasons, among many other reasons, I just would like to explain it to you, that the gap shows actually maybe, because of, ignorance, because they don't know, or probably because they don't understand how really actually the Islamic economy is working. Once you know about it, then you may have some, let's say, obsession how really to operate those principles in reality.
Yeah, indeed. In related to that, this is one of the questions, I think, from one of our international audience, Babangida Muhammad Gidado. He said that he's graduating from Islamic studies.
Excuse me, I'm distracted with my surrounding. Sorry. Can you repeat the question? Hello? Can you repeat the question?
Development studies.
I'm having difficulty in hearing your voice.
Okay, one of our audience, I think, he's from overseas. He's from other countries. Bamangida Muhammad Gidado. He's asking that he's graduating from a university on Islamic studies, but he's enthusiastically want to specialize on Islamic economic system. Can you please advise him on the orientation on how to realize his goals?
Oh, yes. I think if he's or she is still studying, I suggest that she can read several books that I can advise, especially maybe if my experience told me that maybe the first thing that you should know how really to read a good book in Islamic economics. And there are several books that I can recommend. One of them is written by Hussein Askari et al. The title of the book is the Stability of Islamic Economy. And this is really a good foundation for somebody who would like to know how it is operating or working. It's not, the book, of course, is not really perfect. There are still many unanswered issues, but I think that is the beauty of it. So once you know the weaknesses of their approach, then maybe you can have your own research to perfect it.
Thank you very much, Pak Halim. I think also the problem of for the case of Indonesia, the problem of literacy is also because many people with a very strong background and very strong road to the community are not having any the da'i, for example, our preachers are not equipped with the Islamic economic system, Islamic economic knowledge that they are very close to the community, that can influence the community more effectively. If only we can actually develop their knowledge, then it would be able to realize a very bigger potential on our community. So, Bamangida Muhammad Gidado, I think with your Islamic studies knowledge that you are graduating from, you will be able to contribute a lot if you study some of the books that Pak Halim has mentioned just now.
Yeah, I just would like to add my perspective in this problem. I think for sure we know that, especially in Indonesian experience, most of our so-called experts in Islamic economics has education background based on, let's say, Islamic teaching, not macroeconomists. Mostly they are talking about, and also most research in Indonesia, especially currently, for example, to my knowledge, those research are mostly focused more on micro perspective, such as, how really to deal with riba, how really to find an optimal allocation of portfolios, from micro perspective. But I think to mainstream, that's what I'm, trying to refer to, trying to make sure everybody understand the Islamic economics. I think we need also to use the micro economic perspective. I recall this is also the same experience that has been experienced in the conventional economics, for so many years, 100 years, that people tend to talk about micro perspective. Not until 1920s, when the economy of the world was under a very deep crisis. And then Sir Keynes, as you remember, as we all remember, provide the solution. Yeah, that is the macroeconomic principles, which is quite different from the micro perspective. And I think in Islamic economics, you may find the same thing right now. So I think I urge the participants here to look very carefully whether you can also apply the micro principles to the macro perspective, to macro problems. For example, in a micro perspective, there is still a controversy whether, especially in the banking sector, whether you can really, let's say, allow to do the smoothing out the profit of a certain entity or a bank, for example, because there are still some fatwas or ulamas, for example, they are against to have this so-called profit equalization principle, because they said, when you try to put your money into the bank, then you should get the profit of that particular year. You just cannot really, let's say, postpone my rights to get the profits, right? That is from the micro perspective. But if we are talking about macro perspective, that will be different. We need to talk about how really to smooth out the whole profits for the whole economy, for the whole for everybody, to make sure that everybody can get the fair share, but also does not really contradict to the rights of each person. So you can tell here there is another perspective that we need to find the principle. So I think this is some challenges that I'm trying to provide to the participant. Sorry, it will be a bit long.
No, that's very, very interesting, Pak Halim. If you don't mind, there's one another question that's actually related to your answer just now, that we, on the macro level, there's something that we need to think about, and also related to your point just now about the portfolio on a macro level. So Faroha from Universitas Muhammadiyah Lamongan, he asked about the share Wakaf, the stock Wakaf. He was asking about there's a big potential on share Wakaf to be developed in Indonesia. Indeed, it's very, very big potential. I mean, in Malaysia, we know that KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, was actually belong to a Wakaf organization. They organize it. They take profit out of it. And the question is, but how do Nazir face the market risks? As we know, the value of share is always up and down. Pak Halim, probably.
Yeah, I think you know, I have maybe to the most part already explained it and answered the questions.
Yeah,
but you know, of course, I like to let's say expand further my answers like this. You know, if you try to read the book, there is no difference between the Islamic economics with the classical conventional economics. You know, if we try to divide this economy into the real economy and the monetary side, when you try to look at the classical economics, they don't talk much about the monetary side. That means implicitly in classical conventional economics, money is nothing than a medium of exchange. So that is also the objective of Islamic economics. Try to make sure that the monetary side, the amount of money is the same as the total, the total of, sorry, the multiplication of price times the kilograms, the production side. So if you have this, then you don't have the inflation, theoretically. And this is actually the main tenet, the stability of Islamic economics. Now, coming back to the question, then what will be the sources of growth in Islam? There is nothing more than the productivity itself, the profit and loss aspect of the economy. That will be the most important source of growth, which can be, you know, the productivity can be explained in terms of the machinery, the physical machinery, the innovations, the education on people. These are the main three sources of growth in a real economy. And I think when you're talking about the real productivity, that we are talking about the real interest rate.
Yeah.
Then we are talking about how really to divide or to distribute this real interest rate into the people. So in micro perspective, as I said to you, then there is a fatwa, and also there is also a principle in Islamic teaching that, you know, you earn what you contribute, right? You cannot really, you know, take that rights, that real interest from me. That is from micro perspective. If you try to invest 100,000 rupiah, and then you get 10% of it, that means 10,000 rupiah will be your, let's say, a profit, then I should get the 10%. Unfortunately, in macro perspective, because there are so many people there, and there are so many ups and downs in the economy because of the uncertainty. And sometimes, as a regulator or as policymakers, maybe you can use a kind of smoothing average of interest rate, real productivity. So I remember the story of Yusuf, as you know, the prophet of Yusuf. 7 years we have very good years, 7 years of drought seasons. Then what should our prophet Yusuf did at the time? He tries to use the smoothing out system. You know, that means we can do it actually at a macro level. Try to make sure that the profit will not be shared totally. We can always have the principle to make sure that the profit or the real rate of return is actually smoothing out. So back to the questions, I think this is a matter of how really to find the level of smoothing out. You know, this is macro problems, not micro problems. I hope that.
And at the same time, by diversification, we expect that the Wakaf, the share Wakaf, will enable us to create a portfolio that cancel out the negativity of one stock to another. That the value will be able to be preserved until the end of the time.
Yeah.
But just one more question that was actually related to the government. The question is very simple, and yet I think this is a very important question to us from our audience, Lutfi from Persi 73 Garut. How do we actually make people know about Islamic economics, especially sukuk and wakaf in the village environment? And what concrete steps that the government has taken?
Yeah, I think the straight answer will be more socialization, more educations, and making sure that, as early as possible, our children, for example, already has been taught about Islamic principles, so they know, the advantages of the Islamic principles compared with the conventional one. So I think that will be the best way. That's why I said to you earlier, education is actually one of the sources of growth sustainably in the longer term, and that will be the objective of our strategy right now. Try to make sure that the Islamic teaching, Islamic economics teaching, can also be, let's say, taught not only in university, but also in high school and even the junior high school.
Thank you very much, Pak Halim. I think we're so great to have you. It's more than the allocated time that we inform you. We're still waiting for Prof. Chijakcha, but your insights is really beneficial. We got several questions again. I think the one regarding Wakaf for SDGs has been answered before. And also another one from our friend Lawan Bello from IUM Malaysia. He was asking about why there was a gap between the potential and the reality of collections on voluntarily zakat and wakaf Indonesia. You have also highlighted that the literacy was your answer on that case. I think we have to let you go because you have another appointment at 3 o'clock. We realized about it, as you mentioned just now. We cannot thank you enough for you. Thank you very much, Pak. Jazakallah khair. Hopefully we can discuss for further programs and for another webinar, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much, Pak.
Bu Hendri and Pak Faisal.
Thank you.
I hope that my explanation will be useful, and
Amin.
and I hope that we can have more discussion on these very important, also interesting topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak. Inshallah, Pak Halim.
Thank you.
Good luck for the meeting today.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I really have to admit that I try to keep smiling, though I'm really concerned about what has happened. I mean, like Prof. Murad Chijakcha until now has not answered my email. He used to be very, very responsive. Just within second, he will answer the email. Since last night, actually, we have communicated with the changes that we've made. with the current development that we got tremendous participants that has been registered, and yet since last night he didn't answer. The last connection was really 2 days ago. We informed him about who's going to be the keynote speaker and other related presentations. I think you all know that I try to actually take a longer time to enable us to hold you to have Prof. Tijakcha possibly, but until now we haven't got any reply from him. I think I would like to actually read some of the information about him first. Prof. Tijakcha is Professor of Comparative Economics History and Islamic Finance at KTO Karata University in Konya, Turkey. He has massively researched and publicized the writings and research on Wakaf. I have to personally consider him as the father of Wakaf, so that's why we are so enthusiastically try to make sure that he could actually spend 1.5 hours at least to discuss a lot about the cash Wakaf and Wakaf in the history and institutionalizations of Wakaf, and what's the institutional requirements to actually make the Wakaf a success, especially in the case of Indonesia. What would be the role of the government? Is our trend towards Wakaf are being laid, and if we know that Wakaf has been there for a long time, the question of why our founding fathers, the Islamic economists, are not actually establishing this at the first time. Why do we choose Islamic Bank at the first time? And what is the effect, of course, on macroeconomics if Wakaf is being developed in a massive and a more structured manner? He is, I can remember vividly in one of the university in Middle East, when one of the PhD student was actually presented her PhD dissertations on Wakaf, and it turned out that none of the reference was actually referring to the works of Murad Tijakcha. One of the academics decided that she should fail. That is to the extent how important the works of Prof. Murad Tijakcha in Wakaf field. And yet, Prof. Murad Tijakcha has returned back to Turkey. He was spending quite lots of times in NCEF, Malaysia, developing his research. He received his PhD in economics and economic history at University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, USA. He's been sitting in various positions, including executive academic board of the Istituto di Storia Economica in Brata, Italy. He's the third Alliance Professor for Islamic Studies at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, Germany. So I really would like to say that without further ado, Prof. Murad Tijakcha, the floor is yours. But until now, as much as I concern that he's supposed to be here delivering the knowledge to all of us, but I'm more concerned about, is he okay there in Turkey, knowing that he's just moving from his old house to the new apartment, selling all his house. So we actually planned the public lecture back in January and planned to do it in February, but he said, like, I think I need to take some time because the hurdles on the moving and making sure that moving is running very well is not as easy with the age of mine now. Please bear in mind that he did his PhD back in 1978, where I myself and many of us probably was not born yet. So he's a very knowledgeable person for this one. I think we really have to take advantage of his knowledge, his long research on Wakaf, and yet we are so unfortunate that until now we cannot make him attending this. We lost our contact since last night. He didn't reply. If you saw me just now, did several times to make a call. It was left unanswered. I'm really sorry about this, but what we can do is that we will actually do taping on his lecture, and then try to make sure that he could deliver as what he has prepared about the topic that we have today, and yet to let you go home without any additional knowledge is really a sinful. So we have discussions that I probably might present one of the research that I did back in Durham University. I have presented it in Berkeley University related to Wakaf. For anyone who didn't want to join about this, really feel free to actually leave the room. But we're still expecting him to come, but yet to kill the time, really, I would like to present some of the very basic knowledge on Wakaf and what research that I have done before with some of our friends. So please allow me to do so, and forgive us for really could not make sure that Prof. Tijak came on time. Now, this is my research about Wakaf and our question on beyond Islamic banking, how the Wakaf can play the role in creating an Islamic moral economy, an experimental approach. So this was done several times ago. It has been published in international journal. I've presented this in SASE conference in Berkeley University. This was the very basic questions that we have. If we look at this history, we know some part of this in Damascus, in Syria, in Spain. Islam was really bringing the civilization into a huge progress. And if we have a look at this, Timur Quran said that a millennium ago, around roughly the 10th century, the Middle East was an economically advanced region of the world, as measured by standard of living, technology, agricultural productivity, literacy, or institutional creativity. Only China has been more developed. And around 1200, no city in Christian governed Europe could match the splendors of Baghdad or Seville. And yet, if we have a look at the Islamic civilizations and the country in Middle East and some other part of the world, the people of Islam or the disadvantaged face now. So the question on that time was arise that if we look at today, the Muslim world has been at a very poor state as measured by standard of living, technology, agricultural productivity, literacy, or institutional creativity. And in terms of finance, for instance, the Muslim world has shown a low financial literacy index. Indonesia, for example, the Muslim most populous country in the world, we were ranked number 16 out of 18 in Asia Pacific country in a survey 2013 by Mastercard Financial Literacy Index. The Instrument of Islamic Finance Literacy Index has even not been designed in the case of if we want to know or we want people to actually be literate in Islamic finance. So my question and our question on that time, why the Muslim world economies has been declining compared to the developed Western world. we try to research about this, and some of the research come up with probably the legal and institutional stagnations. Our ulama has not so much progressively doing the ijtihad to actually come up with the new regulations, the new law regarding many things that actually being developed for the last 1,200 years. Another scholar come up with the reasons that why we are actually being lagged behind, because there's divisions of knowledge. So there's a knowledge of the general knowledge and religious knowledge that actually someone who want to learn religion should concentrate on religion, but someone who want to learn general knowledge should concentrate on that. So these divisions of knowledge is the source of the current conditions of the Muslim. Another one is that the efficiency in Islamic rulings of or ijtihad. So not only the numbers of the ijtihad is actually being limited recently, but also there's deficiency in the Islamic rulings on the ijtihad itself that was seen by some of the scholars. And one other scholar also said that probably secularizations is the reasons why we are in these conditions now. And so what we are trying to do is that instead of blaming on what we are experiencing, why don't we just try to turn on the candle? We try to move our current society into a better society. So what we did was on the time a question of what institution that we had before, but we don't have now. If we were so progressive years ago, what things that we have on that time, what institution that we have before, but we don't have now. So our analysis on that time is, one is there's Wakaf. Hudson, Marshall Goodwin Sims Hudson, the historian from Chicago University, he said that it's very vital. It's the successes and the failures of the economy of the Muslim world depended on the management of the Wakaf system of that Muslim. But how do we perceive Wakaf in the Muslim area and in the West? If we have a look, Gaudesi, for example, he said that the Wakaf institution has contributed to the development of charitable trust system in the Western world. So Gaudesi is making a very thorough historical research about how could Oxford and other English academic institutions in the college system in the UK, including Durham, actually having such an institutions that really mimicking the madrasah in the Middle East. So he saw that in its early phases of development, Oxford may have owed much of the Islamic legal institution of Wakaf charitable trust. So he saw that prior to the introductions of Wakaf by Oxford on that time, one of the college there, the British legal system did not actually recognize any institutions that enable someone to actually contribute and making sure that their contributions is being preserved until the end of the time. So at the same time, in the Islamic world, Timur Quran, for example, he said that the Wakaf has been under development because of through the passage of time, Wakaf has made dysfunctional because it's not flexible. So Quran found that many of the assets of Wakaf in the Islamic countries are being dysfunctional because they try to actually do the same thing that was done in 1,400 years ago. The purpose of the Wakaf cannot be changed, and this has been actually contributing to the dysfunctional of this. And Hudson say that Wakaf was the main vehicle of the financing both commercial as well as public ventures. role that has been replaced by bank and other financial institutions. So Hudson saw that the modern institution has tried to replace it, and yet he believed that it's still relevant to actually revitalize it and make it as the main institutions to develop the country. So I want to actually quote Alawi in 2009. Alawi is actually now the Minister of Finance in Iraq. He said that this type of service-based charitable work, or Wakaf, is an essential element of the Islamic economy. We think as it were religious obligation with a strong sense of social justice and moral responsibility. And he criticized that, he said that how ironic that contemporary reformers want to promote civil society institution when authentic Islamic models honed over centuries of service has been systematically undermined and destroyed. So Alawi was actually pointing out that why are we starting our Islamic economic and finance progress starting from the Islamic Bank? Why are we actually not starting it from Wakaf? So we try to also analyze further about what sort of institutions that probably might be important for us to actually revitalize our conditions. We come up with the result: private equity and venture capital. One of the reasons behind the great upsurge in the Western world is the proliferations of private equity and venture capital. The source of many of the growth in many developed countries was really from private and venture capital. This is something that really, at the same time, lack in many Muslim world. So we see that Islamic finance at the same time has a quasi-equity financing contract, such as Mudarabah and Musyarakah contracts, which mimic the venture capital properties of conventional finance. And early Islamic economists, founding fathers, agreed that Mudarabah is ideal contract type should be adopted by Islamic Bank. The current dominant financing of Mudarabah in the Islamic Bank is not Mudarabah, it's Murabaha, is seen as concealed riba by Chijakcha, another contribution by Prof. Chijakcha in 1998. He has indicated about this. So with this, we are actually trying to have a look at Wakaf. So what is Wakaf? I mean, around several years ago in the social media, you might see that many of us has actually saw this picture on the left-hand side, Wakaf Sayyidina Usman. So Sayyidina Usman was living at the very early of Islamic world, and yet his Wakaf is actually being preserved until now. There's a new hotel being built in the Haramain from his Wakaf on that time. So how could this been preserved so much? So the word Wakaf literally means to detain or to prevent. In the context of Sharia, it applies a form of gift in which scopus or the principal is being detained and the usufruct is set free. So Sayyidina Umar on that time, for example, if you contribute for a plantation, an estate, then this plantation will produce fruits that you can sell. So this plantation is being preserved for eternally, and yet the usufruct, the manfaat, the benefit of this in terms of the money that you raise from selling the goods can be actually being used for many of other things for the social purposes. So in the case of this Wakaf Sayyidina Umar in the form of the hotel will be there under the Wakaf system as the owner of the hotel, and yet the income that the hotel got from its operations can be used for the social purposes. In Indonesia, we are very familiar with this. Remember that some of our friends from Aceh, for example, whenever they perform Hajj in Mecca, all of the participants will got some money, 1,500 real for example, the last time, and this was actually being given by the Wakaf that was done by one of the ulama from Aceh that on that time. So so Wakaf is actually the very basic words means prevention from being inherited, sold, gifted, mortgaged, rented, land, etc. So all the assets or the money or the cash that was actually being Wakaf will be used for the purpose of charity and being preserved eternally. So this is the legal basis of Wakaf, Quran Surah Al-Muzammil, and then there's also some hadiths. I think some of us are very familiar about this. The Prophet ﷺ saying that if a believer die, then there are three things that can be actually contribute to his good deed, although he has died. The first one is the knowledge which is taught and deployed, and the righteous son he left behind, who passed on the Mus'af, mosques were built, the house he built for Ibn Sabil, the river or the water that supply to the public, or the charity of the issuance of his wealth at a time when healthy and during his lifetime. All of this will be to see him after he passed away. So the Wakaf enables someone to actually enjoy getting so much benefit after he died. So that's some of the legal base of Wakaf. So what we try to study is actually, we try to analyze the role that can be played by Wakaf institutions, social endowment fund in a loan contract-based setting. So what we try to do is that if on that time there is no bank, and on that time there's also only Wakaf, cash Wakaf back in the Ottoman Empire, then will people actually being better off when the institution that lend them money is Wakaf institution, not the bank? So what's special for the Wakaf institution is the non-enforceability nature of the contract and the existence of moral motivations. So the participants can decide whether they were going to take a loan or not, and if they decide to take the loan, from which institution they want to borrow. Do they want to borrow from Wakaf institution or the bank? And then within the contract, we determine how much the profit rate that they to actually share between themselves and the institution or the bank, and then we determine the willingness to repay the loan. So our experimental design as follows. We actually give everybody a certain amount of money, and then from that money, we offer them the possibility of doing an investment. The investment can give a return, and in the end of the term, investment, and then they will come up with the decision whether they want to follow the contract to give a share of the profit to the bank or to the Wakaf institution that they have the cooperation with. So the experimental design that we do is a game attributes. We conducted it online. We do some pre-recorded video. We do Bahasa as the main language. We distribute the pay of contribution to the participants. The total correspondence on this time is around 60. We only played it once. So this is our experimental design. We compare the Islamic bank and the Wakaf. The financing option was Mudarabah, profit loss sharing. The profit sharing is 50-50. The source of fund is for the Islamic is 50% of the agreed loan. In the case of Wakaf, there's no enforcement. The source of the fund is the social endowment funds. So our result, this is the flow of the so we give them different endowments, 15, 5, and 10. The investment opportunity is 100%. Initial cost is 10 million. That's why some people might just invest using their money or not, their own money if their initial endowment is above 10 million or equal to 10. And some who are having less than 5 millions, then 10 millions, they can borrow money. When they want to invest, how much do they want to borrow money, the funding? Will they from Islamic bank or will they take it from Wakaf institutions? And how much they will borrow? So we then randomly give a 0, 10%, and 200% return for those who invest. So neither Islamic bank or Wakaf has these return informations. And we will give we did give our participants some money, some sort of percentage of the return that they do under this experiment. So our result is quite surprising. Only 85% of our people actually take the investment, 15% are not. So we saw that the entrepreneurial skills or decisions of our participants quite different from one to another. And around 60% of our participants take Wakaf. There are 25% take bank and 15% did a self-funding. And then we come up with a compliance rate. What we saw is that under Wakaf institutions, interestingly, there are still 30% of the participants are not compliant. That means that they either pay the profit lower than they're supposed to be, the 50-50 nisbah, or they don't pay it at all. So some people actually did not comply with the rate. But also interestingly, within that 70% of those who comply with the rate, 15% of them are actually paying more than their actual profit. Why did they do that? We did try to ask them. They said that because they feel thankful for the social funding that they got for their investment. So they want to contribute to the social funding process. As on the Wakaf, on the Islamic bank, we saw that the one who didn't comply is actually higher, 62% compared to 38% who comply to the rate that they agreed before. So the moral hazard of Mudarabah is actually more prone to the Islamic bank compared to Wakaf institutions. Then we try to find out who are the kind-hearted, who are the ones who actually paid to the Wakaf institution, contribute to the Wakaf institution more. Interestingly, the lower income person and the middle income person actually contribute more. So looking at the social movement now that allows people to contribute for any amount of money from 10,000 rupiah, for example, less than $1, to actually contribute to any Wakaf institution online or through any apps is actually a very smart way because it's our research and find that many people from a lower income actually and middle income actually want to contribute to the social purposes. And we try to also find out about the cheaters. Interestingly, we found that 62.5% of the cheaters who didn't comply with a agreed nisbah was actually the higher income, unfortunately, and the lowest is actually the people with lower income, around 12.5%. I think that's all that I can do. I know it's far nothing compared to what we can actually learn from Prof. Tijakcha, but this study is really something that I eventually has the idea from reading Prof. Tijakcha's publication. I would open for any questions probably. We will record our Prof. Tijakcha lecture, and then we will actually upload it to our YouTube Encore. Until now, unfortunately, Prof. Tijakcha was not online. I also tried to trace the email. He didn't reply yet since last night. I'm a bit concerned about him more than my concern about the program itself, I think. Should I answer the questions then? All right, we got some questions now from Mukhlis. Can you tell me please about the essential value of Wakaf? What I'm not sure about what the essential value of Wakaf that was mentioned, but one thing that very stand out on Wakaf is that the Wakaf is actually quite different compared to Zakah and Sadaqah, because in the case of Wakaf, you can actually the asset or the principle or the scopus of the contributions to the Wakaf need to be preserved for eternal purposes. And the use for the manfaah, the use of this funding is the one that will be allocated for other purposes, for the purposes of social purposes, for example, or other things. The next question is from Lawan Bello again. My question is, can be the main reason for low voluntary compliance of Zakah and Wakaf in most Muslim society, despite the religious status and potential of the two for macroeconomic development? I think that was been answered before. It was the literacy problem, but also I want to highlight another things. There was this research, interesting research that was done several times ago. The finding is very interesting because some people actually knew about it, but yet they are not willing to do it. So there is a distance between knowledge and the action. Other words, we can say that in Islamic terms, knowing it doesn't always mean doing or perform the amalan. So that was the things that was being highlighted in that research. Another question, is there a risk of fraud in Wakaf management? What are those risks and what are the mitigations? Well, the history also see that there is a possibility of people who actually manage Wakaf do the fraud. Some of the people actually try to do it to avoid Zakah, for example, and also to actually give some of the assets to the favorite son or daughter, because the one who contribute to Wakaf has the authority to determine where and what the use of the funds. So yes, there's a risk of fraud, of course. What are those risks and what are the mitigations? Currently, in the case of Indonesia, is to make sure that it was registered to the Ministry of Religion, and like that we are actually preserving and making sure that the Wakaf is actually being maintained until the end of the time or eternally. Truly, there's another question. Okay. I think some of the question has been answered. Most of the time has been answered. I think it's 3:30 26. Until now, we haven't got any further reply. So we are so sorry about this. This is truly unexpected. We thank you for your patience, for your enthusiasm for this webinar. We promise you we will upload the lecture of Prof. Chijakcha as soon as we can contact him. Again, thank you very much. Again, apology for this. Pak Faisal, do you want to give a closer remark, please?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for bearing with us until the end. I think we let's join. Let's just pray for Professor Chijakcha to inshallah to stay healthy. We don't know until today what has happened to Professor Chijakcha. I hope he's okay, and we inshallah we will post we will record his lecture right after this event, and we'll post the lecture on YouTube at the latest next week. And I deeply apologize. We on behalf of Indonesia, we deeply apologize for this inconvenience. Thank you, everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Again, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Again, apologize for the inconvenience. Really, bye now.